You wake up. Sunlight filters in like nothing's wrong, but something is. You feel it before your eyes even open. Not fear, not panic, just pressure. You breathe in, but it doesn't feel free. It feels scheduled, like the day has already decided who you need to be. And yet everything looks fine. There are no chains, no orders, no shouts, no jailer. Just a phone vibrating, a calendar waiting, a world whispering, "You're free. You can do anything." But deep down, you already know the truth. You're not free. You're just allowed to choose the method of your exhaustion. This is the modern trap. Invisible, normalized, inescapable. A system that doesn't punish you. It convinces you to punish yourself. Kafka warned us in fiction. Foucault mapped it in theory. But now you're living it. They called it Kafkaesque. The feeling that the rules are always shifting. That you're being watched but don't know by who. Judged but not told for what. Pulled into endless systems you didn't sign up for, with outcomes you can't predict. And if you dare ask, "What am I guilty of?" the answer comes in silence. Or worse, you should already know. You check your email, 10 messages, all urgent, all polite, all expect something you didn't agree to. You open social media. You scroll past 100 lives that seem more efficient, more joyful, more in control than yours. And even though no one said a word, you feel behind, inferior, exposed. That's how it works now. Control without force, oppression without a face, traps without walls. It is often safer to be in chains than to be free. Franz Kafka. That line wasn't a metaphor, it was a map. Chains at least are visible. But invisible expectations, they strangle slower and deeper. So maybe it's not about escape. Maybe it's about finally seeing the shape of the cage. And if you're starting to see it, even just a little, then you're not lost. You're waking up. You've probably been told that freedom is about having choices. But what if the system doesn't care whether you obey or disobey, because it already owns your attention? You don't need a dictator shouting orders. You just need a dozen apps tracking your habits, a job that demands passion, a culture that turns burnout into a badge of honor. That's not freedom. That's conditioning. Foucault called it disciplinary power, a type of control that doesn't chain your body, it shapes your behavior from the inside out. You internalize the gaze, you become your own watcher. There are no more locked doors, just mirrors. No one arrests you. You self-correct. No one punishes you. You punish yourself for falling short. Visibility is a trap. Michel Foucault. You post online and wait for validation. You track your steps, your sleep, your productivity. You feel guilty when you rest. Why? Because the system has rebranded surveillance as self-improvement. The panopticon isn't a prison anymore. It's your home screen. It's the meeting that could have been an email. It's the pressure to stay reachable, likable, marketable. You're not working for a boss. You are the boss, the worker, and the product, and you still feel like you're underperforming. This is where the Kafkaesque becomes real. You walk into rooms and feel judged, but no one says anything. You follow rules you never read. You're held accountable to expectations that shift every week. And when you ask, "What did I do wrong?" the answer comes back cold. Wrong? No one said you were wrong. Just not enough. It's not about breaking rules. It's about breaking you until you no longer ask questions. Kafka's characters were never arrested with evidence. They were just consumed by a process that had no face, no end, and no explanation. Sound familiar? You didn't get a manual for adulthood. Just deadlines, performance reviews, endless demands for clarity in a system designed to confuse. So you adapt. You say yes when you mean no, you nod when you want to scream, you shrink yourself to fit the frame. And somewhere along the way, you forget what your real voice sounds like. Here's the twist. The system doesn't actually want your rebellion. It wants your compliance wrapped in the illusion of freedom. You're not asked to resist. You're asked to be resilient, to bounce back, to stay grateful, even when you're falling apart. And the worst part, you start to believe that if you're struggling, it must be your fault. That's the real power of a Kafkaesque society. It doesn't break your legs, it convinces you were never meant to walk. You try to explain it, but the words don't land. You say, "I'm tired," and they say, "Get some rest." You say, "I feel lost," and they say, "You're doing fine." But you're not fine, because this isn't tiredness, it's psychic exhaustion, a slow suffocation by invisible forces. And no matter how much you sleep, it doesn't go away. The system doesn't attack you directly, it doesn't need to. It bleeds you quietly, with praise, with pressure, with performance. And worst of all, it convinces you that you're the problem. This is the new face of control. Not through punishment, but through confusion. Not through silence, but endless noise. You don't need to be censored. You just need to be overstimulated, until you forget what silence even feels like. Kafka wrote about characters lost in bureaucracies they didn't create, trapped in processes they couldn't understand, endlessly filling out forms, chasing approvals, looking for someone to blame, but no one's in charge. The system is in charge. And you know that feeling, don't you? The call you're waiting for that never comes. The application that disappears into a black hole. The meeting where you're talked over, smiled at, dismissed politely. They never say no, they just don't let you in. That's the trap. You can't fight what you can't see. You can't win against a fog. Foucault warned us. He said modern power doesn't act on your body, it acts on your behavior, your choices, your identity. It trains you to be normal, and then punishes you subtly when you aren't. So you become hyper-aware of how you walk, how you speak, how you're perceived. You turn your own mind into a courtroom. You self-edit every sentence. You rehearse smiles, and every day a little more of you goes into hiding. You play roles, the hard worker, the good friend, the agreeable one. And slowly that mask becomes skin. Not because you're fake, but because authenticity feels dangerous, like being too much or not enough. And this is not just personal. This is designed. They call it professionalism. They call it grind culture. They call it resilience, but it's spiritual erasure. It's trading your inner world for approval you never really receive. Ever wonder why burnout feels like shame? Because this system doesn't just overwork you, it isolates you. It tells you success is a solo mission, that asking for help is weakness, that you're replaceable unless you're perfect. So you suffer in silence. Smile when you're breaking, and when it all crashes you whisper apologies like failure was a crime. Kafka knew this. He didn't write horror. He wrote realism about how it feels to be crushed by systems that pretend to serve you. You apply for jobs that don't respond. You pay fees you don't understand. You wait on hold, listening to music that loops like a joke. And the whole time, your dignity erodes. Not from one big moment, but from thousands of small ones. And when you try to speak out, they say, calm down. They say, don't overthink it. They say, everyone's tired. They gaslight the truth until you start to question yourself. Kafka called it the trial. Not a courtroom, but a feeling that you're always being judged, even when you haven't done anything wrong. Foucault said, the gaze doesn't just watch you, it shapes you. You don't behave because you're told to. You behave because you fear being seen. And that's the real tragedy. Not that you're oppressed, but that you participate in your own suppression. You police yourself. You mute yourself. You criticize yourself. And every time you do, the system wins without lifting a finger. You didn't consent to this, but you adapted because survival looked a lot like submission. And no one told you that pretending to be okay would cost you your sense of self. This is why you feel disconnected. Not because you lack gratitude, not because you're broken, but because deep down you know you're living in a loop that wasn't made for you. And that loop looks like getting up, working, smiling, posting, apologizing, performing, getting back in line, trying harder, and still feeling like a ghost. That's the Kafkaesque. It's not just strange, it's not just absurd. It's the quiet agony of being trapped by something you can't name, something that doesn't even know your name. You start to notice it when you finally slow down, that low hum beneath everything. A sense that you've been moving, doing, responding without ever choosing. Not forced, just expected. And you met the expectations because that's what you were trained to do. But now you're starting to ask, who trained me? And why? Here's the truth. The system doesn't break you with brutality. It doesn't need to. It simply teaches you to obey by seducing you with comfort. It offers just enough stability to keep you from revolting, but not enough meaning to make you feel alive. This is what Foucault meant when he said power is no longer about punishment. It's about participation. You perform, not because someone is watching, but because you've absorbed the gaze. You watch yourself. You correct yourself. You discipline yourself. What's terrifying is that it feels normal. You tell yourself you're free, because technically you are. No chains, no bars, no one telling you what to do. But freedom without clarity is just another kind of prison. And this one, it's harder to escape, because it feels like it's coming from inside you. Kafka showed us what this looks like, the endless waiting, the confusing rules, the feeling that there's some door you're supposed to unlock, but no one will tell you where the key is. It's not oppression. It's disorientation. It's waking up one day and realizing you've become a version of yourself you didn't agree to. One that's always tired, always available, always trying to catch up. You thought you were building a life. Turns out you were just checking boxes. And no matter how many you tick, the emptiness stays. Because this isn't a crisis of productivity. It's a crisis of presence, of meaning, of soul. And that's where the rupture begins. You look around and realize, nothing changed. But you did. You're no longer satisfied with being efficient. You want to be real, not impressive, just honest, not busy, just here. This is the beginning of power, not the kind they sell you. Grind harder, hustle more, manifest louder. That's just another cage, painted gold. Real power is something else. It's the ability to see the trap without becoming bitter. To know the system is rigged, but still refuse to let it shape who you are. It's silence in the face of noise, stillness in the face of pressure, truth in the face of performative positivity. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." He wasn't talking about self-control in the way we use it now. He meant inner sovereignty. The kind that comes when you stop outsourcing your worth. When you stop letting others provoke you into forgetting who you are. When someone ghosts you, when the world ignores you, when the algorithm buries you, you don't react, you return to yourself. That's not apathy, that's power. And in this world, it's radical. Because everything around you is engineered to make you feel less than. So you'll try harder, so you'll buy more, so you'll stay busy, so you'll stay small. The moment you pause, question, and choose differently, you break the rhythm. You interrupt the loop. You reclaim the one thing they can't monetize, your inner life. Kafka's characters often never escape, and maybe that's the point. You don't have to escape the world. You have to wake up inside it, see it, name it, and then stop playing by rules that never served you. You stop explaining yourself, stop apologizing for your needs, stop shrinking to make others comfortable, and you start listening to the part of you that always knew, the child who wondered, the rebel who refused, the soul that whispered, even when no one else believed you. They called you too sensitive, too intense, too dramatic. But now you see, you weren't too much. You were just awake in a world that prefers sleep. That's what it means to live aware in a Kafkaesque society. You don't run, you don't hide. You stand in the center of it and choose presence over performance. And slowly you remember the truth they never wanted you to know. You were never broken. You were just trapped in something that was never made for a whole human being. You've seen the trap. You've felt it tighten. And for a moment, maybe longer, you believed there was no way out. But here's what they never told you. The system can shape your world, but it can't touch your interior unless you hand it the keys. Foucault wrote that power isn't something you escape, it's something you learn to navigate. Because even if the walls aren't real, their impact is. But just because something feels normal doesn't mean it's natural. And so, here's the turn. You don't beat the Kafkaesque system by tearing it down. You beat it by refusing to mirror it inside yourself, by not becoming the very thing you fear, by not turning your mind into another authority figure. You stop fighting shadows. You start reclaiming ground. The first ground? Your time. How much of your life is dictated by reaction? Notifications, alerts, deadlines you didn't create, expectations you never agreed to. Reclaiming your time doesn't mean quitting your job or leaving society. It means one clear act, choosing what gets your attention. If you can pause, even for 5 seconds before responding, that's freedom. Because for those few seconds, you're not performing. You're not proving. You're just being. Kafka never wrote his characters an escape. But he showed us what happens when we live by rules we don't question. So here's your question. What rules are you still obeying that don't exist anymore? That you always have to say yes, that rest must be earned, that you're only worthy when you're useful, that being misunderstood is a sign of failure. None of these are facts. They're internalized scripts, passed down, reinforced, never challenged. Foucault would say they're technologies of control. And the moment you recognize them, they lose their grip. So rewrite them. Start small. Permission to not answer every message. Permission to not monetize every talent. Permission to feel deeply, even when it's inconvenient. Permission to stop being your own boss, critic, and audience all at once. And then comes the harder part, presence. Because when you stop performing, silence rushes in. And silence is where the real war begins. Suddenly, you're face to face with the part of you that got buried under productivity. The one that asked, what if I'm not good enough? What if they leave? What if I fail and it was all for nothing? That voice doesn't go away when you optimize harder. It only quiets when you start listening, without judgment, without rushing to fix. Because that scared, raw, restless part of you, that's not weakness. That's the part that still remembers you're human. And being human means being whole, not efficient, not optimized, not endlessly productive. Whole. Kafka's horror was that his characters were swallowed by the machine. Foucault warned that we'd swallow the machine into ourselves. But you're standing in the gap. You've seen what the system does, and you're choosing something else. Not rebellion, not escape, sovereignty. It starts with awareness, then presence, then something we rarely speak of, grace. Grace for the fact that you've participated in your own exhaustion. Grace for the self that forgot how to rest. Grace for the days when you'll fall back into old loops. Because you will. But that doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're learning how to live in a society that profits off your disconnection without letting it define you. And that's the real act of power. To be in it, but not of it. To see it clearly, but still hold on to your softness. You don't have to go off grid. You don't need to write a manifesto. You just need to start with this. What would your life look like if you stopped living as if you were always being watched? No camera, no audience, no invisible judge, just you, present, choosing, breathing. That's not escape, that's return. And when you return to yourself, the walls begin to blur. The exits you thought were sealed start to appear. Not as dramatic escapes, but as subtle shifts. Different conversations, different choices, a different tone in how you talk to yourself. And maybe, just maybe, you don't need the system to break for you to feel free. You just need to stop feeding it your soul. If this spoke to something in you, don't keep it quiet. Share it. Pass it on. Someone out there is still blaming themselves for feeling trapped, and maybe your share is the first crack in their walls. Subscribe if you're tired of noise and want more content that meets you in the silence. Like if this felt like truth, not just content. Comment if you're ready to stop pretending everything's fine. This isn't about building a big channel. It's about building a space where it's safe to feel again, where thought doesn't need permission. So if that matters to you, stick around. We go deeper from here.